Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to our live today. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to jump in. We're going to have so much fun today. We're going to be talking about ruffles, all things ruffles. So thank you guys for hopping on. I'm going to give them just a couple minutes to get joined. Happy Thursday, or as I like to say, Friday Eve. My name's Bethany, by the way. I am an education support specialist with Singer. And so today, instead of being in our studio in our main headquarters in Nashville, you are in my craft room today in Nashville. So you get to see a little bit of my messy place. I've kind of got things all over the place here today because of making today's setup work. But today we are going to be talking about all things ruffles and specifically our ruffler foot, the ruffler attachment. So I know this thing kind of looks crazy, but it's quite miraculous how this thing works and what it can do. It can be a little intimidating when you first see it, but we're going to get over that and we're going to have some fun with it. And look at all these fun moving parts. We're going to make this work on our machine today. So welcome. Everybody's kind of jumping in. I'm so happy to see all of you. Give me some hearts. Let me know you're here. If you have a ruffler foot already, please let me know in the comments that you have one and how much you love it or any questions you might have about it. If you don't have one, get some pen and paper. You're going to want to take some notes. You're going to want one of these when it's all said and done. And I have some really cool things that I have to show you all. We're going to do some demonstrations. We're not doing a full project or anything. We're doing demonstrations. I'm going to show you this thing in action. We have some really helpful information about preparing a project that you're going to ruffle. And then I have some finished projects that I've done that I'm going to show you. So you have one and it's super cool. Awesome. Hey guys, thanks for jumping on. Oh my goodness, I love you guys. Big fan of the ruffler foot. I love that. Thanks. I'm a big fan of it too. And I've done some really fun projects and I feel like it's the perfect accessory that you need like going into the holidays to make some really wonderful and beautiful holiday gifts. And I'm going to show you one that I like to make for the holidays and gift. And by the way, these are on sale on singer.com. So if you want one, I see a few of you are saying, I want one. You're definitely going to want one at the end of this live, but you're going to want to jump over to singer.com to pick one up. Okay. So we're going to get started in just a second. Let me know where you're watching from. Like I mentioned, I'm here in my craft room in Nashville, and I'm going to start, I think, by showing you some finished projects that I've done and some other finished projects that some of my coworkers have done that I grabbed and brought to show you guys as a demonstration of what they've done or examples. But the first one I'm going to show you is the one I was talking about that I like to do for the holidays. So this is a Christmas ruffled holiday towel. This was actually a towel that I had on hand, and all I did was add some ruffled fabric to this, and then I did a little ruffled ribbon over it. This ribbon was already ruffled, but I just attached it. And then I love rickrack. I feel like rickrack will never go out of style. So, and ruffles too, I feel like they've made a full comeback. So anyways, so this is a towel that I did. And I did fold this fabric over to give it more volume. But yeah, so we have people watching from everywhere. I love this. I love seeing everybody from all over. I hope you have better weather today than we're having here in Nashville. It's rainy and cloudy, but that's like the perfect weather to be in my sewing room. So it's okay. So yeah, how cute is this little ruffled towel? So what we're gonna learn today will help you be able to create something like this, and it's so easy. So I'm also gonna give you some tips on how much fabric you need, because you have to remember when we're ruffling, we're tucking the fabric and ruffling, so we're using more fabric than we started with. Or we're using more fabric to make those ruffles, so our finished length is going to be shorter than what we started with, and we need to know how much fabric we need to get all the way across this towel. So we've got some tips and tricks to show you on how to figure that out, but let me show you some more little projects that have ruffles. It's kind of fun to see what we have. So this is another kitten kind of like a decorative towel. You would unbutton this and put this over your handle for your stove, your oven. But it's got ruffles across the top here. See? And then it goes longer. It's so pretty. And then it's ruffled across the bottom as well. Look at this perfect little pleated ruffles. Again, with the ruffler foot. So we have another example of where the ruffler was used. And I love this one. So I feel like you could do this for just about any holiday. And then we have an apron. So this is just a solid black apron, but we added some really fun decorative like polka dot fabric to the bottom, and it's a very tight ruffle. So you get a lot of fun. This is fun to do with like if you're using a shorter amount of fabric versus a longer amount. It really gives some fun and flair. And we use the same fabric for the straps. So it all matches and ties together. And to kind of show you what that looks like up close, I've got a strip of that just up close. This one was serged before it was ruffled. But yeah, how fun is that? Look how perfectly, like you could do this by hand, but it would take forever. And then you would never want to do it again. This little contraption, it's not that little, this contraption right here is our ruffler foot, and you're going to be able to create this kind of look within just a few seconds. So we're going to kind of go over how this works, but I want to show you, like, it comes in a box just like this, and I'm going to show you a couple of the parts of it first, because there is a lot going on. As you can see, when I move this, there's a lot of moving parts, and when you get it on the machine, it's all moves with the machine. If you really take the time to look at it up close and watch it do its thing, which we're going to see up close in just a minute, it's really interesting how all of this works along with the machine. I don't know, I thoroughly enjoy those kind of things. The shows that show you how things are made or how things work, like those kind of shows fascinate me. So anyways, I'm a little nerdy about that, but this is one of those things that really blows my mind. So whoever created this is a genius, but this right here is the attaches to that arm that comes off your needle, and that when your needle's moving up and down, this will move up and down, making this move up and down and pushing this back and forth. Again, it works all seamlessly. So let's go over some of the parts that you need to know. When you attach it to your machine, it attaches right here on that ankle. So this whole part right here is going to face you on your machine. So it feels like it's a little backwards because the bulk of it is towards you, but that's exactly how it's supposed to be. And there's a couple of settings on here. This right here, this little orange dial, I'll loosen it and then show you how it moves up and down. This is going to control how much fabric is being pushed into that ruffle, okay, or into that pleat. I like to keep it on the higher end. This is the higher end down at the bottom. It goes from 0 to 8. I like to keep it on that higher end. I'm going to tighten that back up. And that is just going to push more fabric into that ruffle. So this is a variable that's going to determine how much fabric you need to create as many ruffles as you need for your project. The other piece that's really important right here is the amount, or how often, it ruffles. So the first one right here says 1. This means that it's going to do a ruffle every 1 stitch. So every time your machine makes a stitch, it's going to pleat a ruffle. So it's like stitch and ruffle at the same time. Every single one. Like 1, 2, 3, 4. You get it? All right. So this next one, you just lift this. It's hard to do on this freehand, but you lift this up and slide it into the 6. That means it's going to do a ruffle every 6 stitch. So it's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. So you get that? And so it's going to space them out a little more. And then this last one right here is 12. So that means it's going to do a ruffle every 12th stitch. And then there's this little one right here. Can you guys see that? I know it's kind of hard to focus with my lights, but this has a star on it. And if you set it to the star, it just sits right on top. It just rests right on top. And that means it's not going to ruffle at all. So if you have this attached to do some ruffles, but then you want to attach that ruffle to something else, and you just don't want to ruffle anymore for that moment, you can just set it to the star and it will not ruffle. It'll just straight stitch. So you don't have to take this whole contraption, this whole foot off, which is really not hard to take on and off, but you don't have to take it on and off just to be able to sew in between ruffling, which I think is really nice. And then I'm gonna go over how to feed your fabric into this when we get over to the machine in just a minute. But here's an example, and I'm gonna do some of these in live with you here in just a second. But this is an example of what this looks like. I just took some scrap fabric and set the settings that I wanted, and I got some perfectly pleated ruffles with this ruffler foot. The other nice thing, and I'm gonna show you how to do this today too, is you can attach a ruffle to a solid piece of fabric and ruffle it at the same time. And so that way, when you're done, you have a nice seam with your ruffles and your solid, and you are ruffling this as you sew it onto the solid, which the straight piece of fabric. So I feel like that's a really cool like step. You don't have to ruffle it and then attach it to your project. You can, and I did that with some of these projects because of what I was working on, but it's also nice that you could add a ruffle to the bottom of a jacket or to the bottom of a pant leg, to a cuff or whatever without having to pre-ruffle. You can ruffle and attach it at the same time. How cool is that? All right, so let's see here. I have a vintage ruffler. Oh, that is so cool. That is very cool. Thank you for sharing that, Lacey. I love like vintage things. That's what's really cool about Singer is, you know, that we've been around for 170 years. So we have some really cool pieces that we can reflect back on and say, look at where we started. Look at where we're at today. It's just so cool to appreciate those things and how so many of those things that we started with, we still use today. We may have improved upon them a little bit, but we still use them, and I love that. So thank you for sharing that with us. So anyways, we're gonna learn how to do some ruffles, but I wanted to quickly show you when you first get a ruffler, it's really, or you're about to sit down and do a project, especially one like my towel here, you need to know, again, how much fabric you're gonna need to get all the way across the towel. So in order to do that and to order to figure out what kind of ruffle you want, like everybody likes different types of ruffles. Some like a lot of ruffles like this. Some people like more spread out ruffles. It's totally up to you. But to figure out what you want and what you like, you want to get some scrap fabric and you want to cut them all the same length. And this is important because we're going to know exactly what our starting length was. So when we do different settings and we find the ruffle that we like for our project, we can measure how long that ruffle is after we've ruffled it, because it's going to get shorter. And then it'll tell us, okay, well, we started with 12 inches and now our ruffle's down to only 6 inches. That means we need twice as much fabric as the width of our towel to be able to ruffle all the way across that towel, because we used it shrunk it down half. So that's, you know, a little math involved, a little math and a measuring, but I also recommend adding a couple of inches to that measurement so you can make sure you have enough to have your seam allowance to attach it to your project. But we're going to do some of this today. But before we do that, I want to kind of dive in a little deeper into what I was just talking about. So I did a little board here. I feel like I went back to middle school science class. And I know it's backwards for you guys because it's a forward facing camera here, but I will read it off to you. I can't write backwards. All right. So this one right here is the ruffler is set to every 1 stitch. And my stitch length, that's what the SL is. My stitch length is 4 millimeters. Now, when you're doing a ruffle every single stitch, you are going to want a longer stitch length. Otherwise, your ruffles are just going to be right on top of each other, and it's going to use so much fabric. You can see how tight they are with this one. You see that? That's every stitch there was a ruffle, and my stitch length was 4 millimeters. So I started at 12 inches long, and it took it down to 3 inches long. That is a lot of fabric. That it literally took up so much fabric. So I just wanted to show you how these settings will affect how much fabric you have left at the end of your ruffle. So super cute ruffle, but you would need a lot of that fabric to get across that kitchen towel. All right, so this one over here, this one is the ruffler set to a 6, so it's going to do a ruffle every 6 stitch. And my stitch length, I actually made it shorter. It's a 2.5 millimeters, so 2.5 stitch length. And you can see my stitch lengths are a little shorter here than the previous one. But it took my 12-inch strip of fabric here down to 6.5 inches, so almost half. And again, you would need probably twice as much fabric to get across that towel, plus a couple extra inches, just to be safe. You can always cut the extra off. You can't really add more. It just wouldn't look right. But anyway, so that's a 6 at set to 2.5. We're going to do some of these live here in just a minute, I promise. But I wanted for you all to see this up close. And then this one right here, the ruffler is set to every 12th stitch with the same stitch length as the previous one at 2.5. So you see how they're a little more spaced out. They look like perfectly pleated. Like I feel like this is like a perfectly pleated little skirt here. But it took it from 12 inches long strip down to 8 inches. So not too much was taken away, about 4 inches. But you can see, I'm going to scoot way back. You can see the difference here. How just a few settings with how frequently it's going to ruffle and the length of your stitch can play the part into how much fabric you're going to need. To give you another example of how stitch length really impacts that is this right here. So this one, these two right here are set to the same ruffle every 6 stitch. So they're both set to the 6 on the ruffler. But the stitch length for this top one was 2 millimeters. I thought it was 2.5, but it's 2 millimeters. So this one had a shorter stitch length. So you see how my ruffles are closer together and I have more of them because my stitch length was shorter than this bottom one. This bottom one right here, my stitch length was set to the highest setting that my machine that we're using today will go to, and that was 5. So it's still doing a ruffle every 6 stitch, but because my stitch length is longer here than up here, my ruffles are further apart. Do you see the difference? Is that making sense? I want to make sure that you guys can see that difference. So this top one started again at 12 inches and it shrunk down to 5.5. And this one started at 12 inches and it shrunk down to 8 inches. So that's almost like 2.5 inch difference here. And that's a big difference when you're calculating how much fabric you're going to need to complete your ruffled project. So I know they kind of look same in size on this board because the tighter the ruffles, the more they want to kind of flare out, which is what I love about ruffles. But you can see how close they are. See that? So I'm hoping my demonstration here kind of shows you that. Do you have any questions about what we've talked about so far? And then we're going to move over to the machine and you're going to see it live in action. That is such a good tip. I'm going to sample the ruffler when I go home. Awesome. I want to hear how it goes. If you have questions, you always can send us a DM and we'll answer those. But these are just so fun. I feel like ruffles have made a full comeback. I don't feel like they ever really left, but they've made a comeback. So if you didn't get the memo, rufflers are in, and ruffles are in, and we're gonna do some fun with that. So, you ready? No questions? No questions? Awesome. Okay, let's jump over to the machine. So I'm gonna spin you around. So hold on. All right. So today I'm using the Singer Quantum Stylus 9960, and I already have a ruffler foot attached. I am going to show you how to attach this foot and take it on and off, but I was going to do that at the very end. And I already have one set up here for us to use today. So let me roll up my sleeves and we'll get down to the nitty-gritty. So I currently have it set to 6 and I'm going to zoom you guys in. There you go. Can you guys see that? Trying to get you guys in a good angle so you can really see this working this way. This is where all the action is over here. So I have it set to 6. I have my stitch length currently at 2.5 and we're just doing a straight stitch. And I'm going to show you how to take a scrap piece of fabric. I've got several here today. And we're going to put the fabric into this ruffler foot. So with the ruffler foot, we want this piece right here is what's going to push the fabric into that ruffle. And so we want this piece to be on top of the fabric, but there's another black piece right here. Let me get that other one so I can show you kind of up close. This piece right here, this bottom plate, we want our fabric to be on top of that, but under this one. And then we're kind of weave our fabric through right here. This is gonna help guide the fabric and hold it in place. So we're gonna slide it in, and I'm gonna have you watch me do it real quick. Easiest way I like to remember how to do it is over, under, over. Okay, so we're gonna go over this first metal plate, under the skinny one right there, and back over the next one, and just slide it into place, just like that. You kind of have to shimmy it back and forth. It helps if I have my foot up. I didn't realize it was down. It makes it a little easier, but there you go. So you can just slide it right into place. I kind of line my fabric up with the back of my ruffler foot, but that's just my personal preference here. And then we can put our foot down, okay? There's not a huge difference in the foot going up and down, so that's why I didn't realize it was already down. So once we've got our foot down and we have it set to the 6th stitch, and you see, oh, do you see that? That is where that piece goes, right over that little arm, that screw right there for our needle. So as the needle, watch this. Let's see, where's my thread? I don't want to lose my thread here. So as the needle goes up and down, do you see how this is going up and down? And how it's all going to be moving together so nicely. So let's get my thread back this way. Okay, so now that we've got our foot down, I'm going to push this forward. See how it's pleating? Just like that. And I'm gonna drop my needle. I'm gonna hit my little button to drop my needle. So now we're ready to stitch. Are you ready to see this in action? Give me a thumbs up if you wanna see this thing going. Like thumbs up, we ready? All right. And I like to take my time and go a little slow at first just to make sure everything's going smoothly. There it goes. Speed up just a little. Lift our foot and our needle. We'll bring it out. I'm gonna use my thread cutter on the side, and there we go. How amazing is that? So this was again set to every 6th stitch and at a 2.5 millimeter stitch length. And I don't know about you, but I'm so funny. I will, as it goes through, I'll count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it'll ruffle. And I don't know, I do it in my head. I obviously didn't do it out loud. But yeah, so there's our ruffler. I'm gonna do another one, and we'll change our setting a little bit. This time I'm gonna slide it in like before. I've got my foot up this time, and you see we have this extra lift. Did you know that so this is down, this is up, and then we have this huge extra lift on our Singer machines, and I love that extra foot lift. It helps get fabric, especially bulky fabric, under there. But I'm gonna slide this sample fabric in here, our little test strip, and put my foot down, my thread. Let me get that thread under there. It's important. There we go. I'm gonna change this to every 12th stitch. I'm gonna leave it at the 2.5 millimeter stitch length, and I'm gonna push this forward, drop my needle, and we're gonna go to town. So let's do this one for every 12th stitch. It's going to ruffle. There's one. It's very important that you don't really tug or press on this fabric. You want it to be able to pull the fabric into those ruffles. So do not pull against that, or else it's not going to give you that ruffle. There we go. And lift our foot and our needle and cut our threads, and there we go. So that's every 12 stitches, and we had a stitch length of 2.5 millimeters. So here's the difference. Isn't that fun? So it's really personal preference of what you want it to do. I think we had a question real quick. I'm going to check it out. What is the name and number of the particular Singer machine you are using? So this machine that I'm using today is the Singer Quantum Stylus 9960. This is a computerized sewing machine. I did a demonstration on this machine recently in another Instagram live. So to get more detail on this machine and all of its bells and whistles, go check out that Instagram live I did I think it was last month. So you can go check that one out, but there's a lot of great information. If you have any questions about this machine, you can always send us a DM. This machine is available on singer.com, and there is some great tools on there to figure out if this is the right machine for the type of sewing projects that you are going to be doing. So I see another comment that says, I loved my ruffler foot. It is so efficient. Efficient is the perfect word to describe the ruffler foot. Absolutely. It makes ruffling so like easy and effortless. So that's a good word to describe it. Let's do another one. Let's do another setting. This time I'm going to change my setting to every single stitch. But remember how I said it's not really ideal to have a shorter stitch length for doing a ruffle every single stitch because they're just going to end up right on top of each other. So I'm going to come over here. I'll show you on my LED screen. I'm going to take my stitch. I have a straight stitch. I love these quick press and go stitches right here, but I have it set to straight stitch, and I'm going to change my stitch length. Let's go all the way up to 5. I think that's as high as this machine goes. It is. All right, so we've got our stitch length set to 5, and we're going to come back over here and get our fabric lined up. So it's going to do a stitch or a ruffle every single stitch, but my stitch length is a little longer, so it's going to help it not be right on top of each other. Okay, let's lower our foot. We've got it set in place. We're holding that. We're going to press that forward, drop our needle, and we're ready to go. It's a quick setup. You really see it in action when you have it set to do a ruffle every single stitch. And we lift our needle and our foot, trim our threads, and there we go. How cute is that? So you can see how just a few settings can really make a big difference. This is every single stitch, this is every 6th stitch, and this is every 12th stitch. Does that make sense? How does that look, you guys? What questions can I help answer real quick? The ruffler foot and the gathering foot. That's a great question. So the gathering foot is going to be best used for more delicate fabrics. You can ruffle with the ruffler foot delicate fabrics and heavier fabrics. So there's a lot more fabrics that you can use with the ruffler foot. The gathering foot is just going to kind of gently gather them. This is like almost like pleated ruffles. Does that make sense? Like, see how these are like perfectly tucked under there? So I hope that kind of helps answer in layman's terms the difference between let's see here. Can I make a curtain with a 44-23? I wouldn't see why not. I think some ruffled curtains would be absolutely amazing. Does the ruffler foot fit a heavy duty machine? Absolutely. I actually was using it on the 6800C last night. I have several machines lined up here that I've been working on. So I have used it on the heavy duties. I have used it on other computerized ones, but it doesn't have to be a computerized Singer machine for you to use it. It can be a manual machine. So if you're not sure if it'll fit your Singer, it really should. But if you're not sure, you can always send us a DM, or you can go to our website and look up the machine you have and see those specs to see if it'll work. Or you can look up the ruffler foot on singer.com and make sure, but it should fit. So that was a good question. And I think I covered the ruffler versus gathering. So the gathering I think is fun. It's good for those delicate fabrics, but the ruffler can do delicate fabrics and more. I'm using just a cotton today for my little, I had scrap fabric, so I was just using that as my example. All right, are we ready to show how to attach a ruffler to a straight piece of fabric and ruffle it at the same time? Ready to see that? This is fun. This is when it all kind of comes together and you're like, the light bulb and the mind blown moment comes together. So we're gonna do that. Let's swing back over here. Y'all had some really good questions, those, so thank you for those. If you guys have any more questions, don't hesitate to ask. We'll set these aside. Okay, so this time for this example, I'm gonna have another blue strip because that's what we've been ruffling. So this is what we're gonna ruffle. And I have a white strip of fabric. It's the same type of fabric and they're cut to the same length, or pretty close to the same length, I believe. Yeah, they're pretty. I think the blue one's just a smidge longer, but not by much. And what I want you to notice is these are both straight. Neither one have been ruffled. And all I'm gonna ruffle when I do this is the blue one, not the white one. But I'm gonna attach them together while we ruffle the blue one. But what's important to note is while they start at the same length, they're not gonna end at the same length of fabric. The blue one is going to be shorter because that's what we're ruffling. So this is a great opportunity to kind of see the difference here. So to get us set up for this, I am gonna change it back to every 6 stitch, and I'm gonna change my stitch length back down to 2.5 millimeters. And what you want to do first is slide in the fabric that you want to not ruffle. And that fabric is going to go completely underneath this entire foot, okay? So we're going to lift and slide it right underneath, okay? So we've got our plain fabric here. Now we're ready to slide this fabric into place. And we're just going to do it like we did before. Sometimes the bottom fabric wants to move a little bit, but that's okay. We will reposition it in just a second. It probably would be easier if you maybe pin them together at the beginning, but anyways. So I've got them both in place. So my blue one is fed through the ruffler. My white one is sitting underneath the ruffler. And I'm gonna lower my ruffler foot. I'm gonna get a little more thread here. Let's get this up under here. I don't know about you all, but I like my threads secure under my foot there. Oh, wrong spot. There we go. And so now we've got our foot down. We're gonna push this forward, drop our needle, and you're gonna see, I don't know if you guys can see right here, this blue one is just a smidge longer than the white one. It's just how I cut it. But you're gonna see that this blue one is gonna end up shorter and we're gonna have a lot of white fabric left over. So here we go. And like I said, we're doing it every 6 stitch at a 2.5 millimeter stitch length. I think I got a little off here, but you'll get the idea. See how it's stitching the ruffles onto the white, and then we flip it over and we have ruffles. And it was shortening my fabric, but my white got a little off, so I didn't go all the way down here, but that was my fault. But you can kind of see how you can get the ruffles made, and then the back is not ruffled. Just like my other example I had earlier. I cut this one off to make it small enough to fit on the screen, so that's why I'm going to show it. But the back is not ruffled. This white is not ruffled. The blue is, and that's how you do it. You want to put the piece that you do not want ruffled all the way under the foot, and the piece that you want ruffled into the foot, and it will ruffle as it attaches it. So super easy, super fun way to get that accomplished. And that would have been a great way to attach this ruffle to my kitchen towel I showed you earlier. Remember our little kitchen towel? Awesome. All right, so last thing I want to show you, we're going to take the ruffler foot off of the machine and put it back on so you can see how that works, because getting it on in the right place is super important. All right. It does make the work easy. That's so true. So to take this on and off, you're going to need a screwdriver, and there is a little screw right here back at the ankle, and we're just going to loosen that a little bit, and then I like to use my fingers to loosen it the rest of the way, and then it just slides right out. How easy is that? Now, I want to tell you, before you attach your ruffler foot to your machine, you want to make sure it's completely threaded. Top is threaded and your bobbin is threaded, because once this ruffler foot is in place, you are not going to have access to your top loading bobbin. So if your machine has a top loading bobbin, you do need to make sure you have a full bobbin in place. You will not be able to change out your bobbin while this is still attached. You would have to take this off to do that. But let's try sliding it back in here. So see how I'm coming in from the right? I want this to go around this arm, this ankle here, and then this needs to be sure to go over this little bar here for your needle. So I'm just gonna slide it right back into place and righty-tighty my screw. I do it with my finger until I get to a certain point, and then I get my little screwdriver back out and I tighten it. You want to make sure it's super secure. And because there's so many moving parts with this ruffler foot, every so often you're probably going to want to make sure it's still really tight. And we got it in there. So yeah, it's back on there. And as I move my needle up and down, I test it to make sure this is in place, and that's working just fine. So that's how easy it is to attach the ruffler foot. All right, so let's see if I have any other questions. I answered those. Can you try it on sheer fabric? You know, I don't have any sheer fabric cut right now, like within arm's reach, but let me pull some out, and then I'll send, we'll try to get a little video, like a story or something posted of me doing it with some sheer fabric, because I think that would be nice to see, especially if you're wanting to ruffle something like some sheer curtains. I was actually thinking about doing it, a ruffle. I have a curtain bar here with no curtains, and I really need some curtains in here. So I was thinking about using my ruffler to make some. So maybe you just inspired me to get on it and get it done. So thanks for that. Any other questions about the ruffler foot? We talked about a lot. I hope you took notes. This is going to be saved to our IGTV, so you can always reference it later. But please, please, please remember how important it is to do test strips. Get some, do it on some white fabric or something if you want, or a lighter colored fabric. And you could even take a marker and write on there what your settings were. So you can just, you don't have to pin these to a board and write it like I did, but you could have the settings on that ruffle. So when you're ready to do a ruffled project, you can say, oh, I really like this ruffle look. I like how full and tight these ruffles are. What was that setting? I can't remember. Oh, it's written on my fabric. So that's a great way to remember. So do some samples. If you have the ruffler foot, get some fabric, write down how long it is left, and your settings for your stitch length and your ruffler stitch, so, or your ruffle frequency. And then you can always reference that to make sure you get the right amount of ruffle for each project you do, because different projects need different ruffles. All right. Does it work on the HD 6800? Yes, I actually used it on the 6800 last night and it works just fine. I actually made this towel on the 6800, I believe. I love using the heavy duties. I have a couple here, and then I have a couple of other machines. I have some manual machines and computerized machines here. And it's worked on all of them. So yeah, you're good with that. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you've learned something new. If anything, I hope it was just fun watching. I find it really satisfying to watch it do those ruffles. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate your time today. Again, my name is Bethany. I'm the education specialist with Singer. If you guys ever have questions, just send us a DM. And remember, the ruffler foot is on sale right now on singer.com. So don't miss out on that. And I can't wait to see what you guys ruffle. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye.